The laughter hit Amanda before she even reached the sidewalk. Look at her. Still walking around like somebody's gonna want that. 3 women from her stepmother's church circle stood outside the beauty supply store, their eyes fixed on the hood pulled low over Amanda's face. She clutched the grocery bags tighter against her chest, her heart pounding as their cruel cackles echoed down the street. Girl, ain't no man ever gonna choose you. Not with what's under that hood. Amanda's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. She had learned long ago that tears only made them laugh harder. That's when the convoy arrived. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows rolled to a stop at the intersection, engines purring like sleeping predators. The whole block went quiet. Everyone knew those cars. Everyone knew who they belonged to. The rear window of the middle vehicle slid down exactly 3 inches. From inside the darkness of that car, a pair of sharp eyes fixed on the woman in the hood, the one everyone else was mocking. He watched her walk past without flinching, her spine straight despite the cruelty raining down on her. Those eyes belonged to Kwon Tae-sung, the head of the most powerful Korean syndicate on the East Coast. And he didn't look away. Before we continue with this story, if you're new here, this channel brings you the most captivating love stories filled with drama, romance, and powerful women who overcome the impossible. If that sounds like something you'd love, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, let's get back to Amanda's story. Amanda Daniel hadn't always lived in shadows. There was a time when she walked freely under the Atlanta sun, her face lifted toward the warmth, her smile bright enough to stop traffic. At 24, she had been the kind of beautiful that made people pause mid-conversation. High cheekbones inherited from her Nigerian father. Full lips and warm brown skin from her black American mother. Eyes that held both softness and fire. But that was before the accident. Before her world crumbled. Before the scars. And definitely before her stepmother, Denise, took everything from her. Amanda's mother, Nneka, had died when Amanda was 17, a sudden heart attack that left Amanda alone with a father who barely knew how to boil water, let alone raise a grieving teenage girl. Emmanuel Daniel was a good man, a hard-working man who ran a small but thriving restaurant in the heart of Atlanta's Buckhead district. But grief hollowed him out. 2 years later, he married Denise Harper. Denise was all teeth and honey in the beginning. She'd laugh at Emmanuel's jokes, dote on Amanda like a devoted mother, and fill their home with warmth. She came with her own daughter, Brianna, a girl 1 year younger than Amanda with sharp features and sharper ambitions. For a while, things seemed okay. Then Emmanuel died. A car accident on I-85 during a thunderstorm. One moment he was there, the next, he was gone. Amanda was 21 years old, orphaned for the second time. And Denise's mask came off the very day they lowered Emmanuel into the ground. You think you're gonna keep living here for free? Denise had said that night, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. Your father left everything to me. This house. The restaurant. Everything. You want to stay? You work. Amanda had been too numb to fight. That numbness cost her everything. The restaurant had a kitchen fire 6 months after Emmanuel's death. Amanda had been working the closing shift alone, something Denise insisted upon. The grease trap caught fire, and before the sprinklers kicked in, flames had crawled up the wall and found her. Burns. Deep, cruel burns that started at her left jaw and trailed down her neck toward her collarbone. Amanda had screamed until her voice gave out. Denise arrived at the hospital not with comfort, but with an insurance adjuster. The restaurant was covered. Amanda's face was not. During those long weeks in the hospital, Denise visited exactly 3 times. Brianna never came at all. No one from church stopped by. No friends called, they'd all drifted away once Denise started spreading rumors that Amanda was difficult and ungrateful. When Amanda was finally released, wrapped in bandages and shame, Denise delivered her verdict. You can't go out looking like that. People will talk. You'll embarrass this family. She handed Amanda a scarf and a hoodie. Keep yourself covered. The last thing I need is folks pitying us because of your face. Those words carved themselves into Amanda's soul deeper than any scar. 3 years passed. Amanda became a ghost in her own home. She cooked, cleaned, did laundry, managed the household while Denise and Brianna spent the money from the restaurant's insurance payout on designer clothes and spa treatments. She wore long sleeves even in Atlanta's sweltering summers. She kept her hood up even indoors. She became invisible. And every day, Denise found new ways to remind her of her place. "You're lucky I even let you stay here," Denise would say. "No man's ever gonna want you. Not with that face. You should be grateful you've got a roof over your head." Brianna was worse in some ways. She never missed an opportunity to cut Amanda down. "You know Marcus from church asked about you once?" Brianna had smirked just last week. "I told him what you look like under that hood. He literally laughed and said, 'Nah, I'm good.' Can't blame him, though. Who wants damaged goods?" Amanda never responded. She'd learned that silence was her only armor. But that didn't mean the words didn't hurt. At night, in the small attic room Denise had banished her to, Amanda would sit in front of a broken mirror and trace the ridges of her scars. The skin was tight, textured, a permanent reminder of the night she'd lost her father's restaurant and, somehow, her own worth. She wanted to believe there was more to life than this. She wanted to believe that someone, somewhere, might see her for who she really was inside. But hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Kwon Tae-sung had not become the head of the Kwon Syndicate by being sentimental. At 32, he controlled the largest Korean organized crime network on the East Coast. Their operations spanned real estate, nightclubs, tech ventures, and a few darker enterprises that never made it onto any balance sheet. He was known for his patience, his precision, and his absolute lack of mercy toward anyone who crossed him. But he was tired. Tired of the masks everyone wore around him. Tired of the false smiles and calculating eyes. Tired of women who saw only his power, his money, his name. His mother had called again that morning. "Tae-sung, you're not getting younger. Your father chose me when I was working in a fish market. He saw my character, not my circumstances. When will you learn to see the same way?" He dismissed her words, as he always did. But they lingered. That afternoon, he'd been riding through Atlanta's Virginia Highland neighborhood when he saw the woman in the hood. The street had been buzzing with cruelty. A group of women, dressed like they were heading to Sunday service, surrounded a single figure. The insults were loud, vicious, meant to wound. Yet the woman didn't run. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. She walked. Straight-backed. Unhurried. Dignified despite the poison being thrown at her. Tae-sung had ordered his driver to slow down. His right-hand man, Jungo, had raised an eyebrow. "Boss?" "That woman," Tae-sung murmured, watching her disappear around a corner. "Find out who she is." Jungo didn't ask why. He never did. Within 48 hours, Tae-sung knew everything. Amanda Daniel. 27 years old. Orphaned twice over. Burned in a fire 3 years ago. Now living as an unpaid servant in her stepmother's house. But it was one detail that made Tae-sung's jaw tighten. "The fire," Jungo reported carefully. "Our contact at the fire department pulled the old files. The grease trap that started it? It had been tampered with. Someone removed a safety component." Tae-sung's eyes went cold. Someone? The stepmother had sole access to the restaurant keys that week. And the insurance payout? She collected nearly $200,000. Tae-sung leaned back in his chair, processing this. A woman deliberately harmed. Burned. Silenced. Erased from her own life. He'd seen cruelty before, he lived in a world built on it. But there was something about this particular injustice that ignited something unfamiliar in his chest. He wanted to meet her. Not as Kwon Tae-sung, the syndicate boss everyone feared. But as a man. Just to see what she was really made of. 3 days later, Amanda was running errands near Piedmont Park when she heard the groan. It came from a narrow alley between a dry cleaner and a closed-down bookshop. Most people would have kept walking. Atlanta's alleys weren't known for their safety. But Amanda had spent 3 years being invisible. She knew what it felt like to need help and find none. She hesitated, then stepped into the shadows. A man was slumped against the brick wall, one hand pressed against his side. He wore plain clothes, dark jeans, a simple gray hoodie, no jewelry. His face was partially hidden by the angle, but she could see blood seeping between his fingers. Amanda's heart seized. Sir? Sir, are you okay? His head lifted slowly. Dark eyes met hers, sharp despite the pain etched into his features. He was Asian, she realized. Korean, maybe. Young, but with a hardness that spoke of a life she couldn't imagine. You should go, he said in accented English. His voice was strained but controlled. This isn't your problem. You're bleeding. I'm aware. Amanda was already kneeling, pulling off the light jacket she wore over her hoodie. Let me see. He caught her wrist before she could touch him. His grip was surprisingly strong for someone who looked half-conscious. I said go. And I said let me see. Amanda met his gaze without flinching. I'm not leaving you here to bleed out in an alley. So either you let me help, or you can explain to whoever's looking for you why you're still lying here in an hour. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or curiosity. Slowly, he released her wrist. Amanda worked quickly. The wound was a gash across his ribs, deep but not life-threatening if it was treated soon. She used her jacket to apply pressure, her movements calm despite the blood. You need a hospital, she said. No hospitals. Then you need someone who can stitch this. I have people. Then why are you here alone? He didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on her face, or rather, on the hood that still covered most of it. She could feel his gaze tracing the shadow where her scars began. Self-consciously, she tugged the fabric lower. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. You don't know who I am. Amanda pressed harder on the wound, focusing on her hands instead of his question. Doesn't matter who you are. You're hurt. That's enough. The man studied her for a long, silent moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It was a faint thing, barely a curve of his lips. But it transformed his face, softening the sharp edges. What's your name? She hesitated. No one had asked her that in months. Amanda. Amanda, he repeated, like he was tasting the syllables. It suits you. And you? Another pause. Then. You can call me Sung. Over the following weeks, Sung appeared in Amanda's life like a ghost she couldn't quite shake. The first time, she found him waiting outside the grocery store she frequented, leaning against a car that looked far too expensive for the neighborhood. You, she said, stopping short. Me, he agreed. He looked healthy now, no trace of the wounded man from the alley. But his eyes held the same quiet intensity. How did you find me? I'm resourceful. He pushed off the car and walked toward her. I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life. I applied pressure to a wound. That's basic first aid. Most people would have walked away. You didn't. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. It's not a big deal. It is to me. He gestured toward the cafe across the street. Let me buy you coffee. As a thank you. She should have said no. She knew that. But something about his directness, his calm certainty, made her hesitate. I don't drink coffee. Tea, then. She almost laughed. Almost. Fine. 1 cup. That 1 cup turned into 2 hours. Then into a second meeting 3 days later. Then a third. Then a fourth. Sung never asked about her hood. Never pressed her to reveal what she was hiding. He talked to her like she was just a person. He asked about her favorite books. She loved poetry, especially Maya Angelou. He asked about her dreams. She wanted to open a community center for at-risk youth someday. He listened, really listened, in a way no one had in years. And slowly, carefully, Amanda began to trust him. She still didn't know what he did for a living. He deflected whenever she asked, changing the subject with a smoothness that suggested practice. But she noticed things. The deference of the waitstaff wherever they went. The way people seemed to clear paths for him without being asked. The occasional glimpse of a tattoo at his wrist when his sleeve rode up. She wasn't naive. She knew he was powerful. Possibly dangerous. But he had never been anything but gentle with her. One evening, as they walked along the Beltline, Amanda finally found the courage to ask. "Why do you keep coming back? You don't know me." "Not really." Sung stopped walking. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, and in that light, his features softened. "I know enough," he said. "I know you helped a stranger without asking for anything in return. I know you've been hurt but you haven't become cruel. I know you see people, really see them." He turned to face her fully. "That's rare. And it matters." Amanda's throat tightened. "You don't know what I look like. I know what you are." He took a step closer. "And that matters more." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, standing in the fading light. Then Amanda's phone rang, shattering the moment. Denise's name flashed on the screen. The warmth drained from Amanda's face. She answered quickly. "Where are you?" Denise's voice was shrill. "Do you know how late it is? I've got people coming over tomorrow, and nothing is ready. Get your useless self home. Now." The line went dead. Amanda lowered the phone, her expression blank. "I have to go." Sung's jaw tightened. "Who was that?" "My stepmother." He caught her arm gently before she could walk away. "Amanda. Whoever that was, the way she spoke to you, you don't deserve that." She couldn't look at him. "You don't know what I deserve." And she pulled away, disappearing into the crowd before he could say another word. We're halfway through Amanda's journey, and things are about to change forever. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me your favorite part so far. Your engagement helps this channel grow so I can keep bringing you stories like this. Now, let's see what happens next. The invitation arrived on a Thursday. It was printed on thick cream cardstock, edged in gold. Denise snatched it from the mailbox before anyone else could see it, her eyes widening as she read. You are cordially invited to an exclusive charity gala hosted by the Kwan Foundation. Black tie. Tomorrow evening. 8 p.m. Below the text was a handwritten note. I would be honored by your attendance. It was signed with a single letter, K. Denise didn't know who K was, but she knew money when she saw it. And this invitation reeked of it. "Brianna," she shrieked. "Get down here. We've got work to do." The next 24 hours were chaos. Denise hired a makeup artist, bought Brianna a designer gown on credit, and rehearsed conversation topics for impressing wealthy benefactors. Amanda watched from the sidelines, as she always did. She wasn't invited, of course. She wasn't even mentioned. You'll stay home and make sure everything's perfect for when we return, Denise ordered. And don't even think about stepping outside. The last thing I need is you embarrassing us. Amanda didn't argue. She never did. But as she watched Denise and Brianna sweep out the door in a cloud of perfume and entitlement, something inside her shifted. She was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of shrinking. Tired of letting fear dictate her life. On impulse, she went to her room and pulled out the one nice dress she still owned, a simple navy gown that had belonged to her mother. It was outdated, maybe, but it was beautiful. And it was hers. She didn't have an invitation. She didn't have a plan. But she was going. The gala was held at the Kwan Syndicate's legitimate front, a stunning glass and steel event center in Midtown Atlanta. Amanda almost lost her nerve when she saw the line of luxury vehicles and elegantly dressed guests. But she'd come this far. She slipped in through a service entrance she'd spotted earlier, blending with the catering staff until she reached the main hall. The room was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers. Orchestral music. Champagne flowing like water. And everywhere, the subtle electricity of power and influence. Amanda stayed near the edges, watching. She didn't know why she'd come. Maybe just to prove to herself that she still could. Then she saw him. Sung. But he looked different. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his hair styled, his presence commanding the center of the room. People deferred to him instinctively. Women in gowns worth more than Amanda would see in a year hung on his every word. This wasn't Sung, the wounded stranger from the alley. This was Kwon Tae-sung, head of the Kwon Syndicate. Amanda's blood went cold. She turned to leave, and walked directly into Denise. What the? Denise's face twisted with fury. What are you doing here? I told you to stay home. Look at you. Wearing that old rag like you belong here? Denise's voice rose, drawing attention. Do you know how humiliating this is? Brianna appeared, champagne in hand, a cruel smile spreading across her face. Oh my God, she actually showed up. In public. Someone call animal control. The laughter that followed was worse than any physical blow. Amanda felt the familiar shame crawling up her spine, hot and suffocating. She wanted to run. To hide. To disappear like she always did. But then. Is there a problem here? The voice cut through the noise like a blade. Kwon Tae-sung stood 3 feet away, his expression unreadable. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits waited silently. Denise's demeanor flipped instantly. Mr. Kwon. No problem at all. This is just, she's nobody. A household worker. I don't know how she got in. She's with me. The words fell like stones into still water. Denise blinked. Excuse me? Tae-sung didn't repeat himself. Instead, he stepped past Denise, past Brianna, and stopped directly in front of Amanda. His eyes met hers. And suddenly, she understood. Sung. Tae-sung. The wounded man in the alley. The stranger who'd spent weeks earning her trust. He'd known. He'd known everything. You. She whispered. Me, he said softly. That familiar faint smile touched his lips. I told you I was resourceful. He extended his hand. Dance with me? The room had gone silent. Every eye was fixed on them. Denise's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. Brianna's champagne glass had stopped halfway to her lips. Amanda stared at his outstretched hand. This man, this powerful, dangerous, impossible man, was choosing her. In front of everyone. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. They danced. The orchestra played something slow and elegant, and Amanda let Tae-sung lead her across the floor, acutely aware of the whispers following their every step. You're angry, he murmured. You lied to me. I omitted. There's a difference. Is there? He spun her gently, pulling her close enough that she could feel his breath against her temple. I wanted you to know me. Not my name. Not my power. Just me. His voice dropped. When I saw you that day on the street, the way you walked through their cruelty without breaking, I knew you were different. Then you saved me without expecting anything. You talked to me like a person, not a position. Do you know how rare that is? Amanda's eyes stung. Why me? You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. He stopped dancing, his hands still holding hers. I want the woman who sees people for who they are. I want the woman who hasn't let the world's cruelty make her cruel. I want you, Amanda. Every part of you. You haven't seen every part of me. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Tae-sung's gaze softened. I've seen enough. But if you want to show me, if you're ready, I'm not going anywhere. Amanda felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of shame. 3 years of believing no one would ever want to look at her. She reached up with shaking fingers and lowered her hood. The gasps were immediate. She heard Denise's voice somewhere in the crowd. "Oh my God, look at her face." But it sounded far away. The scars were visible now, trailing from her jaw down her neck, textured and raw against her dark skin. This was her truth. Her damage. Her reality. Taesung didn't flinch. He didn't look away. Instead, he raised his hand and gently, so gently, traced the edge of her scar with his fingertips. "Beautiful," he said. "Every inch of you. These marks. They tell me you survived. They tell me you're stronger than anyone in this room. Never hide them from me." Amanda broke. The tears she'd held back for years finally fell, streaming down her face as sobs racked her body. She'd carried this weight for so long, and for the first time, someone was helping her set it down. Taesung pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as the gala watched in stunned silence. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." The aftermath was swift. Taesung had done his research. He knew about the tampered grease trap. He knew about the insurance payout Denise had collected while Amanda suffered. He knew about 3 years of servitude and emotional destruction. And Kwon Taesung was not a forgiving man. The next morning, Denise woke to find 2 attorneys on her doorstep with a civil lawsuit for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The evidence was irrefutable: fire investigation reports, financial records, testimony from former restaurant employees who'd been too afraid to speak before. But Taesung didn't stop there. Within a week, word had spread through Atlanta's social circles. The charity gala's attendees talked. The church members who'd once laughed at Amanda now whispered in horror about what Denise had done. The insurance company launched its own investigation. Denise's carefully constructed world crumbled. Her bank accounts were frozen pending the investigation. Her house, the house that had belonged to Amanda's father, was discovered to have significant financial irregularities in the deed transfer. Brianna's credit cards stopped working. Their invitations dried up. Within a month, Denise was facing criminal charges. Not through violence. Not through revenge in the shadows. Through truth. Through justice. Through the system Taesung knew how to manipulate better than anyone. When Amanda asked him why he'd done it that way, legally, publicly, he'd simply said, "You deserve to be vindicated in the light. Not in the dark." The healing wasn't instant. It couldn't be. 3 years of trauma didn't dissolve overnight just because a powerful man chose her. Amanda knew that, and more importantly, Taesung knew it too. He arranged for her to see specialists, both for the physical scars and the emotional ones. The best dermatologists in the country examined her burns and developed a treatment plan. Slowly, with advanced procedures and time, the texture of her skin began to smooth. The angry redness faded. But it was the therapy that made the real difference. Amanda sat in that office week after week, unpacking years of shame and self-hatred. She talked about her mother's death. Her father's absence even before he died. Denise's cruelty. The fire. The loneliness. She talked about what it meant to believe you were unlovable, and what it meant to have someone challenge that belief. Taesung never rushed her. He never demanded more than she could give. He was simply there. Present. Patient. Waiting for her to find her own strength. Some nights, she'd wake up from nightmares and find him sitting in the chair beside her bed, working on his laptop like he'd been there for hours. "You don't have to stay," she'd say. "I know," he'd reply. "But I want to." Other nights, they'd sit on the balcony of his penthouse and talk until sunrise. He told her about his own demons, the pressure of inheriting the syndicate at 25. The violence he'd witnessed. The things he'd done that he couldn't take back. The loneliness of being feared by everyone. "You're the first person who's looked at me like I'm just a man," he admitted one night. "Not a boss. Not a monster. Just me." "Maybe that's because I see you," Amanda said softly. "Like you saw me." Something shifted in his eyes, something raw and vulnerable. "I love you," he said. "I don't know if that's allowed. I don't know if you're ready to hear it. But I need you to know." Amanda leaned into him, her hand finding his. I love you too. 6 months later, Amanda stood in front of a crowd. The community center bore her mother's name, the NECA Foundation, painted in elegant letters above the door. It was located in one of Atlanta's most underserved neighborhoods, a beacon of hope for young people who'd been told they didn't matter. Amanda had dreamed of this for years. Tae-sung had made it real. But it was her vision. Her voice. Her purpose. I know what it feels like to be invisible, she said into the microphone, her voice steady and strong. I know what it's like to believe the lies people tell you about your worth. But I'm here to tell you, those lies don't define you. Your circumstances don't define you. Your scars don't define you. She paused, letting her gaze sweep the audience. What defines you is how you treat others. What defines you is whether you choose kindness over cruelty. What defines you is whether you stand back up when life knocks you down. The applause that followed was thunderous.